In this video, I'll show you how to use limits to compute the value of a derivative. Here's the problem we're going to work through. They want us to use the limit definition of the derivative, that's this thing up here, to find f prime of 6 for the given function. So the first thing to realize is that since they're asking for f prime of 6, this x that we see in our formula, that's just going to be a 6. So every time we see an x in this formula, we're going to replace it with a 6. So that's our first step of our problem. We're going to write out that limit definition, the limit as h goes to 0, of f of 6 plus h minus f of 6 divided by h. Now, our general approach here is going to be to essentially ignore this limit thing. We're going to focus on figuring out what this fraction is, plugging 6 plus h and 6 into our function, working all that out, simplifying, and then only at the very end are we going to think about what's going to happen as h gets closer and closer to 0. With that strategy in mind, let's start with the top of our fraction. So we've got f of 6 plus h. Our function is 4x squared. So f of 6 plus h is going to be 4 times the quantity 6 plus h squared. And then f of 6, that's going to be 4 times 6 squared, all divided by h. When we multiply out 6 plus h squared, remember that we need to FOIL that. We get 36 plus 12h plus h squared. And 4 times 6 squared works out to be 144. Still all divided by h. All right, now we're going to multiply through that 4 on the top. So we get 4 times 36, which is 144. 4 times 12h, which is 48h. 4 times h squared. And then minus 144. Still all divided by h. Now we notice that the 144 cancels with the 144. And we get negative 48h plus 4h squared, all divided by h. Now we can factor an h out of the top. We get negative 48 plus 4h divided by h. The h on the top divides out with the h on the bottom, and we end up with negative 48 plus 4h. So remember, we didn't really pay any attention to this limit thing until now. So now is when we're going to think about what that limit is. So as h goes to 0, this 4h, 4 times 0 is 0, we get that f prime of 6 is just going to be the negative 48. And that's our answer. So work out the algebra, be really careful, make sure that when you see something like 6 plus h squared, you actually FOIL that out. Simplify the top, cancel when you can. Factor out an h. If you're doing it right, you're basically always going to be able to factor an h out of the top. Divide out that h with the bottom. You'll get a relatively simple expression. Think about what happens when h goes to 0. Essentially, we're just going to plug in 0 for h, and then, in this case, negative 48 is the answer that we get.